Hey everyone, welcome back to the MotoAlliance Podcast. I am Peter Kapsner, president of MotoAlliance, here as always with partner in crime, general manager of MotoAlliance, Kevin Book. And Kevin, you are just freshly back from some sort of fitment trip for one of our new cargo boxes.
Yeah, we were in the South Metro today, and we've got 3 Highlands boxes that we were fitting this morning. So we've got a Ranger 1000 that we confirmed fitment for, which is a bed cover. And then we were visiting a dealership this morning to fit the CF Moto 800 Trail.
And the new 2023 ones. These are freshly off the production line.
Yep. Yeah, and then we confirmed fitment on our X3 for the Can-Am X3 Mavericks. And, yeah, they worked. They fit great, and they looked really slick. And the CF Moto is just a really nice, tight fit. And then the X3, the boxes on those, just the confirmation with the body lines of the, because that's such a unique vehicle.
That was one of the most challenging ones, I know. And so I was so curious how that turned out, because I know that our engineering team agonized over trying to get the shape of that right while still having enough to at least pack a series of deli sandwiches or something. Did it turn out okay?
Yeah, it totally did. It looks really great. So great visibility still from the driver's perspective, but it gives, some of that additional storage as well as the coverage that people are looking for protection of their stuff. So yeah, really, really happy with how they fit, and it was just a great visit, meeting some new folks that in the South Metro that we just haven't connected with.
No, it's so good. I think this is application maybe number 10, 11, and 12-ish, roughly, of the Highlands cargo line that we'll ultimately have about 40 vehicles for, but it's been really fun to learn how to do this. So these will come out, what do you think? What is it, 8-10 weeks from now, roughly, is what we need to get them all produced now?
Yeah, late August is kind of what I'm thinking right now. Just if we continue on the path that we're on. So, but it always helps when they fit first try.
It does. So, prototyping is an inexact science, to say the least. So, well, we're glad also when bringing our guest at this point. We're glad to be joined by Dave Halsey today on the MotoAlliance Podcast, who is the communications director for ATV Minnesota. And he has a lot of different kinds of publications and things with which he's involved, but very few people have the same sort of insider look at the ATV community as Dave does. So, Dave, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, Dave, you have been in my pockets for the longest time trying to get money to advertise for your ATV Minnesota. Like, how do I get across the finish line here, Dave? Because so far, I've been kind of putting you off and forestalling, and I'm trying to get a better deal here. What do I have to do?
Mm-hmm.
So persuade me here, Dave.
Yeah. Well, ATV Minnesota, I'm the communications director, and so we have a number of different ways for businesses to partner with ATV Minnesota, which is a state association of 70 ATV clubs, and reach our members, be up to date on all the news on ATV riding in Minnesota. So we have over 300 business members that we list in our magazine. That's $90 a year for the membership, and be listed in the magazine on our website. Then we have the magazine is Minnesota Wheelin', and that media kit is on minnesotawheelin.org. That comes out 6 times a year and goes to all the members of ATV clubs and about 40 or 50 Jeep clubs, the off-highway off-road vehicle clubs in Minnesota. It's a new publication we started a couple of years ago, switched publishers, and it's been going great. So advertising is another way. We also, last year, we started a corporate sponsorship program for businesses, large and small. So there's 4 different levels, starting at $5,000 a year $2,500 a year for a bronze membership for small companies. And we, which includes ads in the magazine, lots of publicity on our websites, newsletters, Facebook pages, everywhere. There's a whole bunch of stuff you get for that. And then there's $5,000, $10,000, and then for the big manufacturers, $25,000 corporate sponsorship, which is a drop in the bucket for manufacturers, and which each of those levels are varying amounts of benefits. So lots of ways to partner with us to support ATV Minnesota and the ATV clubs, right? And at the same time, get your products and your services out to all the ATVers.
Well, and I know that you're involved with Polaris and have been for a number of years. I would imagine, have you been with them long enough, Dave, to sort of watch this emergence from being just a snowmobile company into this massive recreational and utilitarian off-road community, motorcycles, all of that as well. I'm sure you've seen quite the evolution of their business.
It's that, and that's been the fun part of my career. Okay, I got my motorcycle license when I was 15. I've been riding on-road and off-road vehicles for 50 years, so you kind of know how old I am. And I've been writing about motorcycles, ATVs, and snowmobiles for 40 years. So my first job was as a copywriter at Carmichael Lynch Advertising in downtown Minneapolis, where I was the writer. I got to write all the advertising for Harley Davidson, Merc Cruiser, Winnebago, and Polaris snowmobiles. So this is mid 80s, right? Great job. A lot of fun. Got to travel all over. Then in 87, I went freelance and wrote for Yamaha for 6 years, Skidoo Snowmobiles for a number of years. And then Polaris, pretty much Polaris, contractor for Polaris since about 97, doing a lot of the advertising, writing, TV spots, magazine, and then for the last 10 years about on Ride Command. But that, like you mentioned, the fun part has been watching the evolution of the ATV industry, especially, right? I mean, I got to help be on the team that named the very first Polaris ATV back in the mid 80s. So to watch the manufacturers, come out with new vehicles, competition between the vehicles, which is great for everybody, going from 500 to 700. I've got a brochure here that I did for the 700 Sportsman, right? Twin. Biggest, baddest, ATV ever. Who could be anything bigger? Well, look where we are today with, 1,000cc ATVs. And then got to ride the prototype for the very first Razor Trail, which was, we were on a video shoot down in Texas for the Ranger. And they pulled out this little 2-seater and we all got to ride it. And look where that went. So it's crazy just to see. That was in 2008, right? So just think of what has happened from the launch of the first Razor 800 to today. It's crazy, and it's fun too. I mean,
I'm sure it is.
To be involved in all of this with the manufacturers. It's been great.
Well, and that's part of what I want to ask you about, just because of the exposure that you have to all this, and then obviously the background that you just gave. Last podcast we recorded with Dean, we were talking about Ride the Shore, and I had asked him about just some of the trends that he was seeing coming out of even, looking back over the 5 years that they've been doing Ride the Shore. I'm curious from your perspective, just in the exposure that you have and the partners that you work with or whatever. We were in the South Metro today talking to a dealer, getting a feel for what businesses looked like for them over the last 3 years. And they're a CF Moto dealer, and he had a lot to say about what happened with CF Moto during that time. So not necessarily specific to CF Moto, but obviously that's a brand that has come on the market and is, as he said, it's a great bang for your buck, is the way that the gentleman kind of positioned it. But I'm just curious from your perspective, with the exposure that you've had all the way back with these companies to the newer companies coming online, what are you excited about? What's capturing your attention? What are you seeing that's really unique that would make you be interested in continuing to ride or engage in different ways as you are in this community?
Well, yeah, it's just crazy. Every time somebody comes out with a new vehicle, it's like, well, what could possibly come next? What could come after this little Razor Trail, and then wider and bigger and wider and bigger. And there has been some issues that have come along with that. When there's a 71-inch wide side-by-side, but you can't ride it in Minnesota, right? Legally.
Yeah, right.
On the trails, you can ride it on the state forest roads. I mean, it's really a machine that's meant for the Southwest, but people, buy it in Minnesota, and then they find out they can't legally ride it. So there's a lot of excitement. There's also a lot of education that has to come with that, especially the past few years. I mean, with COVID, sales went crazy, right? People were looking for stuff to do. ATVs, side-by-sides, trailers, just sold out. I don't know if you remember a couple springs ago, if you drove by Power Lodge or any of the dealers, they didn't have anything in front of their stores.
Yeah.
They didn't have boats or ATVs or side-by-sides or trailers. They're all gone, which is pretty crazy. So I think it's about a 3% increase in Minnesota each year. In the past few years, there's 340 some thousand registered ATVs in Minnesota. But also with that has come some issues too. And this is nationwide. During COVID, sales went crazy. But as we talked about on a national level, a lot of the new buyers, first-time riders, have really skipped the education component, right? And just bought a side-by-side, headed for the first trail, really didn't know the limits of what they could do. And consequently, their issues have arisen. And that's where the clubs come in and the safety training classes come in, and ATV Minnesota comes in to promote that education. So a lot of exciting stuff. I mean, the new expedition, it's like, dang, where'd that come from? Well, I saw the prototype a year ago, and so that was pretty fun.
Yeah. And what did you, so that's part of what we've been asking people about. I know we're going to have one in our facility next month to start outfitting with a Denali plow and potentially heater and whatever else it needs. I think it comes with factory heat, typically speaking. But what did you think when you first saw the prototype?
Oh, it was pretty awesome. I mean, even a year ago when we were looking at it, it's like, man, this thing is big. It's awesome. It's kind of, next step. And then you also have to ask, well, how much is this going to cost?
Right.
Right. Because, years ago you could buy a Sportsman 400, maybe a 500 trailer for not, it'd be pretty affordable. And now the side-by-sides are at the same cost as many cars or Jeeps. Yep. I bought my daughter a used Jeep when she turned 16, Jeep Wrangler, and it was only $14,000, right? Well, really pissed off my other daughters, but
Well, do you see that people still have the purchasing power to? I mean, I know that with inflation and everything, Dave, that I think we've seen some people need to pull it in a little bit and rein it in. We're not getting the same amount of COVID money into our bank accounts every month. Are you seeing that there's still the demand for vehicles at that $29,000 to $50,000 range?
I think there is. I think it's just a matter of where people want to spend their recreation dollars, right? Are you going to go buy a $80,000 Ranger bass boat, or a $25,000 snowmobile, or a new ATV? And are you going to get, do you want to get a couple of quads for you and your wife, or do you want to get a side-by-side? Do you want to get expedition? So I think the money is there, just based on the sales of recreational vehicles and pontoons and trailers. People are still buying. I think there's still a desire to get out there and explore, right? And that's kind of what that expedition is all about. If you got the money.
Yeah,
I'm hoping I'll get a company expedition next year.
Well, and I'm excited to see that in shop here soon, because even I had a conversation with a guy that does work at Polaris, and he was as surprised as any of us have been in the ultimate release of it, because he was convinced that they for sure would have gone sort of the other direction, in trying to find a vehicle that would be much more in line with probably maybe more of an affordable Razor line or something.
Right.
And it was the complete opposite. So it'll be interesting to see that in person. You've had obviously the chance to see the prototype, but I'm trying to, from the pictures, just understand the scale and what this thing can do. So
yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, snowmobiles too. I mean, I was pulling out a snowmobile brochure I wrote in the mid '80s. And showing it to some people, and they had 7 different models, right, in the mid '80s, 7 different Polaris snowmobiles. Then in the heyday in the '90s, there were over 40 different models, right, of snowmobiles just at Polaris. And if you looked at them, they kind of went up in $500 increments, right? So somebody walks in the dealership, and all you got to do is ask them, how much money you got and how fast you want to go. Oh, this is your sled right over here. So just think of that, 40 vehicles priced at all different levels. Yeah. So kind of ATVs are there now, although even at the low end, they're going up in price too. And that there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, steel's more costly. Everything's costs more to build this stuff.
Yeah. Dave, going back to what you said just about how many new people are joining the community, which is obviously welcome on just about every level. The other part of it, like you said, in terms of lack of education, I'm a big golfer. And so during the COVID too, all of a sudden, all sorts of people that had never even thought about picking up a golf club were out on the golf course. And I have to admit, I kind of went angry old man in the yard and was like, get off the golf course, you knuckleheads, quit shanking it to the right. And so, and I didn't have any patience to worry about education. I just wanted them out. What are some of the best ways for people that are getting started that maybe they don't even appreciate how much safety is involved in this? So do you just have some real basic tangible steps that they can help be a really good contributing member of the community?
Yeah, just especially for Minnesota, just take the online safety course, training course, right? I mean, if you're born after July 1st, 1987, you're required to take the DNR online safety training course in order to be certified to ride on the public trails. A lot of people are missing that, right? So if you're 32, you're supposed to be certified to ride on the public trails. So take that online course, no matter how old you are. If you're 12 to 15, you also have to take the field test, the hands-on test. The clubs hold 70 or 80 of those during the summer. So your kids have to be certified 12 to 15 by taking the online and that field test. And then there's also, for side-by-sides are a different animal. So there is the Recreational Off-Highway Vehicle Association, ROVA, .org. They have a special video training that you can take just that's aimed at side-by-sides, because there's different things involved with riding a side-by-side than a quad. And so there's a lot of stuff online. ATV Safety Institute is another real good one to get information and safety training. And there's booklets on there, how to know when your kids are ready for an ATV, right? And that's a huge issue. A lot of parents are putting their kids on quads that are too big for them. There's been some just awful, tragic accidents here in Minnesota involving kids this year, which have been in the news. They were in the news a month or two ago, big time, when 3 kids in southern Minnesota died on the same day.
Yeah,
that was, and then at that point, then Minnesota Wheeling, we get the phone calls from Star Tribune and the newspapers and the TV stations. What's the story here? So we try and do a lot of that good lobbying too. But yeah, get safety training, pay attention to it, and wear a helmet.
Well, on the topic of education here, because obviously that's a great resource to know where to go for any experienced rider, any changes that are coming down the line, or any new riders to be able to understand what they're getting into. But I understand that you're also very, very well dialed in on much of the legislation conversation that are happening here. I know from conversations that I've had with folks that there's ongoing legislation that's happening in and around whatever what the rights are for the riders out there within these communities. And I'm just curious if you can give us a brief summary of some of the hot topics right now that are being discussed, and if you've got any just any insight into what listeners of the podcast would find useful just as they continue to join their communities, to be engaged in the riding season as they are, and what they can look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the big issue that we've been working on for 2 or 3 years now is raising the weight in the ATV definition, right? So the ATV definition right now is 2,000 pounds maximum. Otherwise, above that, you have to register your vehicle as an off-road vehicle, like you would a Jeep. Well, the Expedition is over 2,000 pounds. A lot of the side-by-sides with full cabs and heaters, they're already over 2,000 pounds. So we've been trying to get this bill through the legislative sessions for a couple of years, unsuccessfully for a number of reasons, and pretty much all political reasons. When you bring a bill to the legislature, you have to have a legislative sponsor. You got to go to the committee meetings. It takes a lot, and there's a lot of politics involved. Polaris is pushing that too, obviously, and they have their EV machines that are coming too that are going to be way over 2,000 pounds. So that's kind of one of the major issues that we deal with. Another one is we're trying to get legislation to allow ATVs on state highways when it's the only route into a community, right? So like down by Zumbro Falls, there's different areas where, boy, I really want to go into town but it's a mile away on a state highway and I can't ride my quad. So that's another one we're working on to try and get that passed on a statewide basis. Trespass is another issue for both ATV industry and snowmobilers. We got the fines raised, but that does involve a lot of education. And then trail funding, we've been pretty successful on getting omnibus bills and money out of the ATV dedicated fund at the state level, which is all the registration money, right, for trails and for clubs. And some of the clubs way up north, Crane Lake and Ely, they've been very successful in getting $1 million or more for new trails, new bridges. So that's really important. Boy, I think there's 16 new trails in the works at the DNR right now. The DNR has an 8-step process for clubs to build new trails. There's 16 of them in the works right now. One of them is to connect Crane Lake to International Falls. There's a whole bunch of new trails coming that, especially up north, are going to connect all these communities, which is huge.
That's so exciting.
All this stuff takes legislation, right? You have to be at the Capitol. You have to be working on this stuff if you're going to get it done.
Yeah.
Dave, we just have a couple minutes left in this particular episode, though we'll certainly have you back. If you could just snap your fingers, wave a magic wand, sprinkle some fairy dust out there somewhere to make one thing happen in the ATV community in the next year, what would that be?
I think it would be getting more publicity out there for all parents to put a helmet on their kids, right? I mean, that's the number one ticket being issued. You put a helmet on your kids when they ride a bike, play hockey, play football. You don't put a helmet on your kids when they're in a 1,500-pound machine, right? That may tip over or somebody may come around the corner. That would be, snap a finger, it'd be all kids under 18 with a helmet on, and a lot of parents too.
Yeah.
I always wear a helmet. You hit your head on that roll cage, that's going to leave a mark, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Dave, it's great stuff. I know that you have years of insider knowledge we're going to want to tap in the months ahead. So we'll definitely have you back. As I said, just one more time, where can people find what you're up to in terms of all of the communications and publications that you're doing?
Yeah, a lot of this information is on our website, atvmn.org. Everything's on there. There's a lot of rider resources, club resources, all the news. We put our newsletter on there. There's a lot of that. I mean, that's the number one source. All the clubs in Minnesota are listed on there. We have a map on there. You want to join a club? Look at the map. There's contact information for all the clubs. And then our magazine is MinnesotaWheelin.org, and then you can see our magazine and all the things we're up to there, including digital ads from all the companies that advertise in our magazine.
Gee, I don't know who that might be. Kevin, do you have any idea what he might be referencing there?
I do have some ideas.
Yeah. I do too, Dave. We will be with you in the fall and for the many quarters to come as part of the publications, and just looking forward to it. So thanks again for today.
You betcha.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Well, for Peter Kapster, Kevin Book, Dave Halsey, and Alicia Corpia, this has been the MotoAlliance Podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.